Hello, this is our curriculum audit presentation. The group members are Jessica, Carol Morgan, Casey, Emma Kate, and myself, Megan. Our curriculum audit review and this presentation is focused on the question of how is the intended reading curriculum adapted to differentiate instruction for all learners. Differentiated instruction has kind of been a buzzword in education for several years. It is something that has been brought up in teacher preparation programs, and it is incredibly important to student success. It involves teachers catering to students' varying learning needs in order for them to be successful. According to an article written by Tobin and McGinnis in 2008, they state that through differentiating instruction, teachers create different levels of expectations for task completion and environments where all learners can be successful. And again, through this presentation, we will explore the following question of how is the intended reading curriculum adapted to differentiate instruction for all learners. So a little bit of background information. As educators, we want to see our students learn and grow, and it can be very frustrating at times when we see our students struggling to understand a particular concept. And it is imperative for teachers to understand that students can learn in different ways and require responsive teaching based on these differences. Students are unique individuals, and what works for one student may not necessarily work for another student. There are 4 different ways that teachers can differentiate their instruction. They can differentiate by content, product, process, and environment. These kind of larger context methods of differentiation allow students to learn in ways that best support their own unique learning style. Differentiating content, or what students are to learn, might involve providing students with their own individual unique learning goals based on data collected from assessments. And based on an assessment, a student may be weak in, for example, a phonemic awareness skill, while another student may need to work on their reading fluency or comprehension skills. Another method of differentiation is differentiating by process, or how students learn the information that is presented to them. So, for example, 2 students may be working on phonemic and phonological awareness skills, but one student might need a more hands-on approach, while the other student might learn better by having more of a visual representation. Both students are working towards the same goal, but are getting there in different ways. And another example of this type of differentiation would be tiering activities in the classroom to allow for appropriate levels of support and challenge for students. Differentiation can also be related to the product that students produce to show what they have learned. Providing opportunities for students to showcase their learning other than a simple paper and pencil test or activity is an example of differentiating by product. Students can create a video recording, a presentation, or maybe record a podcast to show what they have learned. It doesn't always necessarily have to be something written to show what they have learned. And lastly, differentiating by environment, or where students learn, is another tool that teachers can use to help meet the diverse needs of their students. Flexible seating is an example of this type of differentiation. Students can choose the area of the room or a specific type of seat that would work best for them. For example, there may be students in class who would learn better by sitting on maybe a corkscrew seat, as they would need to have that kind of movement aspect in order for them to pay attention and focus. Differentiation is such an important aspect of teaching, and it allows teachers to focus on students' strengths and weaknesses in order to create opportunities for our students where they can learn and be successful.
Our group understands the importance of differentiation in our classrooms, so our audit surrounds the following research question. How is the intended reading curriculum adapted to differentiate instruction for all learners? We found 10 scholarly articles to discuss differentiation and how important it is to our student success. Through these next 2 slides, we've noted our findings from literature articles that support the 6 different topics noted. The first topic is there is growth in literacy achievement from students who receive differentiated instruction. When teachers are supported to differentiate instruction, students have significantly higher literacy achievement scores. The results of the study showed that students showed reading ability improvement in areas such as fluency and reading comprehension when exposed to enriching and differentiated instruction that was tailored to students' needs. The second area is student choice and interest is an important component of differentiating instruction. At the heart of differentiating instruction in language arts is the need to provide learners with choices about what they read and to design their work products so that they're a better match for learners. Most students, even struggling learners, have aptitudes and passions, providing an opportunity with the classroom for them to explore and express their interests mitigates against the sense of failure previously experienced by these students. The third area, differentiation of instruction, involves setting individual learning goals for each student. By keeping the focus on the same activity but providing routes of access at varying degrees of difficulty, the teacher maximized the likelihood that each student was appropriately challenged. There are varying levels of readiness and interest and should split into the following categories: gender based differentiation, interest based differentiation, readiness based differentiation, tiering based on understanding and learning style. In conjunction to curriculum, teachers should differentiate every aspect of their instruction based on the needs of their students. The fourth area is differentiation is a data-driven instructional decision. Differentiated instruction requires interactive collaboration that is data-driven and student-centered to maximize their learning potential. A teacher's efforts to plan for students' needs improve with time, practice, and feedback in the same way that new technologies are constantly upgrading to improve the user experience. The fifth area is differentiation is adapting instruction and materials to meet the level of needs for all students. The use of the one-size-fits-all curriculum no longer meets the needs of most learners. Providing differentiated educational activities and experiences requires work, but changing how teachers teach and students learn will lead to improved academic success. Regardless of each student's individual needs, using a collection of instructional strategies by differentiating instruction is effective and provides optimal learning outcomes. Tiered activities can focus all of the students on the same essential understandings or skills, but at different levels of complexity, abstractness, and open-endedness. And the last area that we noted is grouping students based on their needs and interests is a form of differentiation that can make a difference on student learning outcomes. Research showed that the use of flexible grouping, materials on students' instructional level, self-selected reading time, access to a variety of reading materials, and various other differentiated reading strategies greatly improves student achievement and motivation. And lastly, many of the academic gains are not only related to the cluster grouping arrangement, but also to the degree of differentiation within the cluster group in the general education classroom.
So after we read through our literature and we kind of documented the findings from all of the literature that we gathered, we came up with some conclusions from the literature. And our first conclusion was that students have diverse academic needs. We had discussed that this was something that we already knew, but this literature just really helped to solidify and back up what we already knew. The next point that we made is that the use of Tier 1 curriculum does not meet each student's academic needs, and multiple activities in different tier levels can help to support reading achievement for all students, simply meaning that a lot of the curriculums that we use for reading instruction are Tier 1 based, and it's not meeting the academic needs of every single student. So that's what we came away with on that point. On the next point, we stated that student-centered instruction is crucial for student success, whether that be you're basing your instruction off their interest or basing your instruction off of their academic level. The next one we came away with is that flexible grouping is a way to differentiate for students on a variety of reading levels. So that means that they're not stuck in one ability group. They kind of move around depending on the skill they're being taught or their mastery with that skill. So that was one thing that we saw in common amongst all this literature was flexible grouping was a great tool to use to differentiate. The next point we came away with is that differentiation can help boost confidence in learners. So when they are given instruction that is of interest to them or is on their ability level, then they are more than likely going to be more confident in their learning, versus if you're like going back to that second point, giving them just the tier 1 curriculum and they're not really thriving in that, then they're not going to have as much confidence in themselves as learners. The next point we made was that students gain confidence in their abilities when they take ownership of their own learning. So just making sure that they are involved in their learning, that they understand their progress, all of those things. And then the last point we made is that learners' needs and interest are at the forefront of differentiation and or differentiated instruction. And so just really making sure that the learner is at the forefront, that it's not just the use of curriculum, but that you are pulling on data and their needs, but also what do they enjoy learning about, because that can go back to, like I said, boosting confidence in learners. At the very bottom of the slide, you will see that we have linked our complete literature review if you would like to read that. But yeah, that's all I have for the conclusions from literature.
The audit took place in each of our classrooms. These first 3 classrooms are all first grade classrooms at Title I schools. So Megan's classroom consists of 10 boys and 6 girls. 3 of her students have IEPs and 3 students are going through the INRS process. 6 students are receiving reading intervention services and 6 students are reading below grade level. She uses Fountas and Pinnell for her reading comprehension and Foundations for phonics instruction. And she just utilizes intervention period to address varying needs of her students. In Morgan's classroom, she has 20 students and the majority of her students are male. 3 students receive Tier 3 support. 6 students require support through student reading intervention plans, and 1/3 of her class is reading below grade level. And she uses Reading Horizons for phonics and CKLA for reading comprehension instruction. In Emma Kate's classroom, she has 19 students, 9 are female and 10 are male. She has one EL student, 3 Tier 2 students, and 3 Tier 3 students. 2 of her students are in the referral process. Reading Horizons is the phonics curriculum used, and CKLA Knowledge is used for the curriculum, the comprehension curriculum. And the curriculum used for Tier 2 and Tier 3 is phonics first. So in Jessica's classroom, she has 22 students, 13 boys and 9 girls. 4 of her students have learning disabilities, and she uses Open Court for reading instruction. And this curriculum doesn't allow for much differentiation. She utilizes WIN time for intervention of needs and enrichment. In my classroom, I teach 5th graders, 9 boys and 9 girls. I have 1 student with an IEP and 1 student with a 504 plan. I have 1 English language learner, and 4 of my students are reading below grade level. And I use HMH into reading for whole group instruction, and I use it during intervention and enrichment. In Carol Ann's classroom, she teaches 1st graders. She teaches at a Title I school. She has 20 students, 2 English language learners, 4 students with learning disabilities and IEPs. 6 of her students receive intervention services, and she has 5 accelerated learners. She uses the reading program that utilizes solid level text for small group teaching and Benchmark Universe for reading and phonics.
Throughout our audit, our main focus and evaluation was on the differentiation in our reading curriculum. This was the visual that our group used to help us truly understand differentiation. 2 students working towards the same goal, but needing different supports and different materials and different strategies to help them reach that goal. That is what true differentiation is. For our audit, As I said, we were looking to evaluate the techniques and activities for differentiation that were utilized in our curriculum and in our classrooms to meet all types of learners. The research from Baumgartner showed that the use of these different strategies, such as flexible grouping, self-selected reading time, access to various different reading materials, can help increase differentiation and push students towards success. And so for our audit, it was conducted through basic observation and notes. And we used a curriculum audit tool questionnaire that we found that fit our audit. With the observation and notes, we quickly found that our reading programs lacked differentiation. Some of our programs had the availability of level text, but many of our programs and curriculums did not have access to level text. Every student got the same text. There was no variety. Every book shared the same perspective and the same situations. No self-selection for students, very little resources for accommodations. We had to supplement for our students who were struggling, and there was an inconsistent use of grouping among our groups or among our classrooms and curriculums. When we look at the curriculum audit tool that we used, I'm going to pull it up here. This is what we used to help us evaluate our curriculum for differentiation, to evaluate differentiation in our own classrooms. There are 13 questions, and they really fit our research question and what we were looking to evaluate in our curriculums. The first question, the first, second, and third questions really discuss, was our curriculum aligned to standards that our state course of study was pushing? Was it developmentally appropriate for learners, which really pushed that systemic view of curriculum? The fourth question really talked about, was our curriculum integrating diverse cultural and social backgrounds of our students? Because we believe differentiation helps create personal curriculum for students, helps personalize it for the students. That leads into number 5. Are the curriculum materials including a balance of representation of people with multiple perspectives and identities, really creating that personalized curriculum for our students to help differentiate? Number 6, does it provide multiple ways for students of different ability and skill level to engage? Is there different modes of teaching? That is true differentiation. Are there the visual, the auditory, the tactile and kinesthetic ways to engage in the curriculum? Number 7, are there resources to support scaffolding for remediation or enrichment? Because differentiation doesn't just include our struggling students, but it includes those students that truly need to be pushed and enriched. And so does it provide those resources? Is the curriculum, number 8, appropriately sophisticated and complex? Number 9, does it provide opportunities for expression of and sharing about student experiences? Is it personalized for the student? Is it where each student can provide their own take on it? Number 10, are the appropriate supports, accommodations, and modifications for active participation in learning? That is true differentiation. Can we provide the supports necessary? Does it include the supports necessary for every child to learn and succeed? Number 11, was it vetted by a more in-depth content-specific tool? Number 12, did it demonstrate editorial professionalism? And I feel like 11 and 12 really discuss those. Is it a professional curriculum that teachers should be using in their classrooms? And then number 13, are there supports for teachers to allow them to learn how to use this curriculum in the classroom? So when we go back, after looking at what our curriculum audit tool looked like, everybody's curriculum audit tool that they filled out for their own personal classroom is linked to their name here. But if you look at the data, we filled it in green for those classrooms that said, yes, this is present. And we filled it in red for those classrooms that said, no, this question did not match up with their classroom and their curriculum techniques. As you can see, number 5 number 7, number 9, number 10, and number 11 were where we saw these differences among our curriculums and where we saw a need for evaluation and a need for change. Number 5 discusses the different perspectives that children can have. Are there multiple perspectives within text, within instruction that allow for that personalized instruction, that differentiated instruction that covers all different walks of life? We saw that in half of our classrooms, that was not present. Number 7 really discussed the scaffolding. Was there scaffolding and resources available for teachers to meet all needs of students? And we see that in most of our curriculums, that those needs were not being met. We were either having to supplement or they were not being met at all in our classrooms because the curriculum was not providing it and our classrooms were not providing it. Number 9 discussed the expression of students. Are we allowing our curriculums to be personalized for students that they can express their own thoughts on what they're learning? And we saw that that is not present in most of our classrooms. Number 10 discussed the accommodations and modifications for students of different ability levels. And it is sad to see that many of our curriculums do not provide those accommodations and scaffolds. We saw that most of our curriculums really benefit that tier 1 layer and do not dive deep into the tier 2 and tier 3 needs of our students. And number 11 was that most of our curriculums were not vetted by another resource, which is really talking about the professionalism of it. Are these curriculums ones that we can use in a positive way and feel good about using them with our students? And most of our classrooms do not see that. So when we look at the audit and what we found, we created a chart of the similarities between our curriculums and the differences we saw, and how when we looked at that research from Baumgardner and our literature review, was our curriculums matching up with what differentiation is and how that looks in a classroom. For our similarities, we saw that in 1, 2, and 3, most of our curriculums were meeting the standards and were lining up. They were true systemic curriculums that were lining up to the state course of studies and pushing students to meet those benchmarks, which is what true systemic curriculum is. We saw that most of our curriculums integrate diverse cultures and social backgrounds of our students, which is a good thing. That is showing students that there are different viewpoints and that there are different backgrounds that people can come from and that we should be reading about them. We saw that most of our curriculums do not provide any ancillary resources for scaffolding. We saw that in our data. All of our curriculums include student tasks that are sophisticated and appropriate for our students. Most of our curriculums, however, do not provide an expression of sharing about student experiences. They did not create that personalized and differentiated outlook for students. This is the one, number 10, that really got us, is that most of our curriculums did not provide appropriate support and accommodations or modifications, which is what differentiation is, meeting every student's needs and supports to help them succeed. And we saw that in most of our curriculums, we had to supplement that. We had to do that ourselves. And it did not come from our curriculum. All of our curriculum materials clearly demonstrated professionalism, editorial professionalism. And all of our curriculums provided supports for teachers to help them understand how to teach the curriculum in their classrooms. When we looked at the research and those different strategies that they suggest using in a differentiated classroom, we saw that we did not use, most of our classrooms did not use flexible grouping. We grouped by ability, but however, we did not allow those students to move from within groups. Once they found a group, that's kind of how they stayed, which is not differentiation. You know, as a student becomes successful, groups should be able to be flexible and moving so that students are learning at their own skill level. We all agreed that student choice was something that was lacking in our curriculums, and that we believe that that's important for differentiation and for student success. And so that is something that we wanted to push for. in the recommendations. We also agreed that there needs to be more diverse differentiation within our curriculums that includes different racial backgrounds, different spiritual orientations, different socioeconomic backgrounds, so that students are being exposed and they're reading a variety of texts that prepare them for success in life. If we look at our differences, we saw that half of our curriculums didn't include those multiple perspectives that we were just talking about, that we all agreed were needed in differentiation. That some of our curriculums provided multiple ways for student ability and knowledge level for students to engage. But some of our curriculums didn't. And that was important, that there were multiple modes of learning within our curriculum to meet all the diverse needs of our students. Most of our curriculums were not vetted against a more in-depth content-specific tool. But another thing that we saw is, like I said earlier, the flexible grouping. Some of our groups used it and some of our groups did not. And that was something that we knew was important for differentiation. The need for grouping, the need for a variety of text, the need for student choice, the need for text at different levels, the need for self-selection during reading time. Most of these strategies were not present in our classrooms. And those observations and this data from our curriculum audit tool were what we used to help push our recommendations and view our recommendations moving forward.
Based on the audit and the research we found in the literature, we recommend the following things to be implemented in the classroom. We recommend that teachers supplement for the lack of perspective that is present in most curriculum, such as read aloud books, written activities, depth and picture cards. So adding to those any visuals that you may use, as well as the small group readers you may have. And this could be in race, ethnicity, gender, spiritual orientation, really anything that students would want to relate to and may not have in the curriculum that you use. We also recommend teachers use flexible grouping, which is learning groups based on readiness, their style, student interest, anything like that. And we have seen that it is proven to improve engagement and motivation because students are working with peers that are similar or on the same level as them. We also recommend student-centered instruction, which is based on diverse academic needs, which is super important that teachers know the interest and the needs of their students. We also recommend any additional support, accommodation, or modifications, as we saw that was a big lack in most of our curriculums. And through the literature and our findings, we see that one size does not fit all. In fact, it doesn't fit many. As teachers, we are working constantly to improve and expand in our bank of collection and strategies to help all students. We have found through all of these recommendations that there's research that this differentiation improves their scores. They have higher scores. When students have specific learning goals, they are more motivated and they work hard because they are on level and they can actually accomplish things. They're challenged, but they're in a support that is appropriate for their level. When students have choice, they're also, again, they're more interested in learning, and we recommend all of these differentiation strategies, whether it's in content that you are instructing with, the process in which you are instructing, the product that you expect students to give you, or the environment that they're in. All students need they have their own needs, and they need our support.
So lastly, we just put together some concluding thoughts from our findings from the audit and from the literature review that we did. The first thing we concluded was that differentiated instruction is a common topic discussed amongst educators to improve student learning outcomes. This is something that we all come in contact with daily. And we felt that was a very big topic in our own classrooms. So that was one of our concluding thoughts. And the next concluding thought was that differentiation involves meeting students' individual academic needs based on data-driven decisions, simply meaning that we have the data to support the differentiation that is occurring in the classroom. The next point we took away and this was specifically from the audit, was some of the curriculums evaluated in the audit lacked a few things in regards to differentiating learning. One of the things that our curriculums lacked was multiple perspectives and identities present. So not a lot of diversity in the text that we are given or diversity in the lessons that are being taught. So we saw that that was lacking in our curriculums. The next thing that we saw was there were not multiple ways for student learning. A lot of our curriculums are tier 1 based curriculum, and there was really just one way of learning, and it wasn't providing multiple ways for student learning. And then the last one was that there were not appropriate accommodations within the given curriculums, meaning there were not accommodations provided by the curriculum, and we were having to supplement resources, which is actually one of our last points that I'll go over here in a second. The next concluding thought that we had was that lack of differentiation is present in the curriculums used in the classroom. So overall, we just didn't feel like there was a lot of resources within the curriculum that provided differentiation for our students. And so that kind of went into the recommendations that we decided on would be the best, since it's not present in our curriculums. And that was that we must supplement resources. We need to use flexible grouping, and we need to use student-centered instruction to differentiate alongside our current reading curriculum. So it doesn't mean that we don't use our reading curriculums. All students need that tier 1 instruction, but if they need tier 2, tier 3 supports, then we need to be doing these recommendations that we have discussed today. So this is our last page of our last slide of our presentation. This is just our references that we used through our literature review. So you can see where all of our information came from. But this concludes our presentation on why differentiation is so important for reading instruction.